This is Stephen Byer from Unearthed Films.
This is Eric Stanzi.
This is Fred Vogel.
This is Grandamit Stake.
This is Scott Philip Gergens, director of 29 Needles, and you are experiencing Sadistic Cinema.
Sadistic Cinema.
Sadistic Cinema!
This is Sadistic Cinema.
Welcome, everybody, to the darkest side of the internet. This is Sadistic Cinema. As always, I am your host, David Gibson, and my co-host, my partner in crime, Stephen Nemeth. How you doing tonight, Stephen?
I am excellent, and again, very excited for today's guest.
You're always excited.
I know. Well, we got great guests, so I got to thank you. You booked some awesome guys that you reach out to, and I've made some awesome contacts and connections. I've been able to bring on some colleagues and friends from the world of filmmaking, and today's guest is no exception. He is a filmmaker. He is an author. I don't know if he uses this term himself, but I am definitely going to say he's a film historian based on our conversations, knowledge, and his published works. Our guest is Paul Talbot. How are you doing, Paul?
Hello, Stephen. I'm doing great. Good to be on the show with you and David.
Awesome. And I'm just going to go ahead and mention your works. You are the director of CAMPFIRE Tales, of FREAKSHOW, of HELLBLOCK 13. You are author of the books Bronson'S Loose, The Making of the Death Wish films, and its follow-up, Bronson'S Loose Again, on set with Charles Bronson. You are also the author of Mondo Mandingo and the films of the Dionne Quintuplets. And that's a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah. Yep. And then I'm also, what's keeping me busy now is I do commentary tracks for Blu-ray.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, how did you forget that, Stephen?
Oh man, I don't know. I in a moment our notes we're going to get to that because I just listened to his wonderful commentary on The Mechanic, the new Scorpion release, and that counts as a restoration, doesn't it, Paul?
Yes, it does. Yeah, that was restored from the interpositive from the original 35mm negative. So that's that presentation is the best The Mechanic has ever looked.
And just for those that don't know, the interpositive is that kind of like, it's kind of like a negative, but it's like the orange positive negative that provides the best color for duplication. And man, does it look wonderful. I've never enjoyed the film as much as I've actually not seen it on DVD. I've only seen it, on TV back in the day, and I've seen it on tape. So this was a real treat. And then when I got done, I went back and I listened to your commentary with the movie really fresh in my head, and it was still like just so entertaining, even though I just watched the movie. And you were giving me so many more layers to what I was seeing on screen, and things that were in the screenplay that expand on what's going on, and just insight to everything. It was really wonderful. So, congratulations. That was a jam-packed, quality, entertaining commentary.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I put a lot of work into those commentaries. I do a tremendous amount of research, so I'm always surprised that somebody even actually bothers to listen to a commentary track, and even more happy when somebody actually enjoys it, like you say you did. Good.
I'm not lying. Because if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't be wanting to talk with you more about it. We wouldn't have had you here as a guest.
Right.
The one of your commentaries that I haven't got yet is 10 to Midnight, which is on the way. It's coming from Shout itself. They're just a little slower getting me stuff. Right. With the pandemic. That's the reality of everybody, but it seems like they are a large company and they just announced their Friday the 13th box set and stuff. So it hasn't even left them yet, and it was ordered a long time ago. So I'm still waiting on that. I'm not beating up on Shout Factory. I'm not mad that it hasn't shipped. For those people out there that are very sensitive about how fast movies get to them, A lot of times I place orders and I just wait. It'll be a fun present when it arrives. The only thing I'm a little annoyed with is that Bruce Lee box set from Criterion that is out in every store, but Criterion can't even give me my copy. That seems to be lost again, which I, actually have already gotten a duplicate from Barnes & Noble because I want to watch those with my son, and David's all watching them. And
yeah, I'm halfway through almost.
Yeah, I can't be left out. So I have an extra box set which might go on my son's shelf.
Yeah,
so,
Steven can definitely not let me have it.
Yeah,
Before,
hey, I ain't gonna let that.
that's not happening.
But also commentaries of yours that I've really enjoyed are the ones for Death Wish. Your writing on Death Wish 2 that was in the set, and your audio commentary for Death Wish 5, the Face of Death, which was really good. There were some things about Death Wish 5 where they hinted at the first Death Wish, and there was you gave me more explanations to some continuity or what was going on with the characters or the police officer, and I kind of needed that because I was debating what was going on with that myself. Because the only thing with police officers that I remember from the first one that popped back up again would be if Christopher Guest had, popped up,
Right.
again. But what is that actor's name? Is it Saul?
Saul Rubenstein.
Rubenstein. That's him. Yeah, from he's
Probably
filmmaker,
best known.
True Romance, and go ahead.
Yeah, I would say probably best known for The Unforgiven, the Clint Eastwood Unforgiven.
Yeah.
He plays the journalist in that movie.
That's
That's probably one of the ones he's best known for.
Well, Paul, why Bronson? What made you fall so in love with Charlie?
Yeah, it started with I grew up in the 1970s when, of course, we had long before VHS and even before cable TV, but there was a lot of old movies on TV, and I used to watch a lot on TV. And my mother and I used to always watch all the Elvis Presley movies. And one night we watched Kid Galahad, in which Elvis plays a boxer and Bronson plays his trainer. And that was the first Bronson movie I saw, and I thought, hey, that's a cool guy. And then a few nights later, my father's favorite movie was on TV, which was The Great Escape. And I watched that with my father, and of course, Bronson is in that. So those two screenings back to back made me a Bronson fan. And then in the early 1970s, that was like the height of Bronson mania. Not only were a lot of his movies on TV, but he was in so many TV episodes before he was famous. He was always popping up on reruns of Bonanza and The Big Valley. And then I distinctly remember in 1975, the movie Breakout came out. And I lived in Beverly, Massachusetts, and there was a neighborhood theater, a second-run theater. And a friend of mine from elementary school, we would walk to see the movies, and we walked to see Breakout. And I loved that one. So all of that made me a Bronson fan. From then on out, I watched every one of his movies in the theaters. The ones that I could, of course, when I was still young, a lot of them were rated R. I couldn't go see them. But I pretty much saw every Bronson movie in a theater up until his last theatrical movie, which was Death Wish 5.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you said you watched The Great Escape with your father. Did you watch a lot of movies with your father? Was that like a bonding thing between y'all, or?
It was mostly my mother was the big movie buff. I mostly watched movies with my mother and then went to the movies with my mother. My dad wasn't that big of a movie buff. He would watch some movies, but it was mostly my my mother that it was the person I watched the movies with.
And did you want to be a filmmaker back then, watching those movies?
Yeah, I started off, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be somebody like Charles Bronson, the actor in it. And then as I started studying the history of movies, I started realizing that there's a lot goes on behind the scenes. So I got more interested in being behind the scenes instead of being in front of the camera.
And speaking of being an actor, people will notice on your IMDb, you do have a credit for Bad Girls, Christopher Bickle's Bad Girls. Christopher Bickle was the director of his previous film, The Theta Girl, which Bad Girls I was the director of photography on, and I loved working with you on set for your scenes, Paul. But as I was revisiting some of your early films that you directed, I noticed you in a scene in Campfire Tales, and I was like, hey, I know that guy. And it was really awesome to see you in that role because it is, I guess the premise of that part of the Campfire Tales is an anthology movie for those that don't know it. And that chapter was a very now classic urban legend theme that was going on in that one. And what was that? Was that The Hook? Is that what it was called?
The Hook is what that's called. Yep.
Yeah. And that was, now you didn't direct that segment, right? That was William?
Yeah, I co-directed it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how did you end up, were you always meant to play that role? Did they, how did that happen? Or did you just,
Yeah, well, what that one was when I was young, when I was in high school and college throughout my 20s, I did a lot of acting in plays and local commercials, local training films. I was even in an episode of America's Most Wanted, that TV series. One of those was filmed in South Carolina. And then, of course, that first segment of Campfire Tales, that was made while we were in college. That was like a project for a 16 millimeter production class. We had never worked with 16 millimeter before, so we did something very, very simple, a very simple campfire tale. So that short film became an anthology. And to answer your question, I played the part in it because, of course, when you're making a student film, it's hard to find people to be in it. And I knew I was going to be on the set anyway, so I figured I may as well play the part. So
the Hook was the college project,
right?
And then y'all did the campfire wraparound and the other segments later.
Right. Yeah. We wanted to be filmmakers, and of course, we graduated college, had no opportunities, no prospects. So we said, well, we've already got this short film. Why don't we make that part of a anthology? We've already got one segment done. So we wrote a script for an anthology, and then it took us 4 years total to make that movie, mainly because of the cost. We were shooting on 60 millimeter film, and of course the cost of the film stock, the processing, renting the equipment is where all the money went. So that's where it started as a short film, and over a period of years we turned it into a feature-length anthology film.
Well,
now,
it still looks good. I mean, I watched most recently a VHS upload that somebody put online, but it still has a lot of character to it. I even though it doesn't have the glory of what 16 millimeter can be, it looked really, really good, and the tone and the grittiness really worked for that type of horror film.
Yeah, like I said, we were really young when we did it. I mean, it had a lot of we didn't know what we were doing, but we did put a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of heart, a lot of literally blood, sweat, and tears. So some people do like that. I mean, Mike, look how old it is, and people are still, like you said, I still get people send me messages saying they watched it on YouTube, and then it did come out on VHS, and of course people collect VHS tapes, and they're actually to find a copy of that movie on VHS is pretty hard to do, and the copies sell for a decent amount of money. So some people do still watch that movie. If you make any horror movie, somebody's going to see it, and it's going to have a cult following of at least one person. So I guess Steven's the one person who's the cult following for Campfire Tales.
I dig it, man. I'm trying to remember when I first saw it, because I saw it in the 90s, and I'm trying to remember how or where. What kind of distribution did it have on tape?
It got distribution in the U.S. It got distributed by a company who did mostly porno movies. And the reason it got seen so much is because back in that era, a lot of stores, they were cracking down on pornography. So you couldn't have a store that just sold pornography. You had to have other kinds of magazines, other kinds of movies. So what that company would do, they would usually, like, if you buy a bunch of porno movies, they'd throw in their non-porno movies for free or for really cheap. So because of that, there was probably about 3,000 VHS copies of Campfire Tales were in circulation at one point in the U.S. And then we also got some foreign distribution and a little bit of television and a little bit of back then they would also do like you would stay at like a hotel, and instead of being like cable channels, the hotel would have different movies to choose from, and Campfire Tales was a selection at some point at some of those hotels. So, back then if you had somewhat of a saleable product, you could get it out there and hit your audience.
Oh, that's awesome.
Who wrote the Skull and Crossbones segment?
Who wrote that one? I think that was Bill Cook who wrote that one. And what we did, we kind of like somebody would write part of it, and then it was a collaboration between the two of us overall, every element of it. So,
how did you get Gunner Hansen involved?
Well, when we finished the movie, we said, okay, how the hell are we going to get anybody to buy this movie or see it? And then we got the idea, the guy who tells the stories around the campfire, we figure we could film all of that in one long night. So we said maybe we can get like a cult person and pay him just for one night. And we thought of different people, and of course we thought of like Angus Scrimm, who was in the Phantasm movies, but he was in the Screen Actors Guild, the union. And what that means is you don't just have to pay him union rate, but you have to pay everybody in the whole movie, even if they're not union. So I found, I'm from Massachusetts, and there's a magazine that my parents subscribed to that covered like the New England culture. And one day I was reading an issue of that, and it was a story about a guy who lived on an isolated island, an island where people live there and there's no stores or anything. They have to take the ferry into the town. And I was reading that, and because I had nothing to read, and I was reading that, and it said by Gunner Hansen. I'm like, Gunner Hansen? That's the guy from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I wonder if that's the same guy, but this guy lives in Maine. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was filmed in Texas. Yeah. And then at the last page of the article had a picture, and it said, the author walks down the beach. And from a distance from behind, there was this big guy walking down the beach with the same stance as Leatherface on the famous Texas Chainsaw poster. I said, what the hell? That must be him. So, and again, this is, when they were 1990, before the internet and anything like that. So I wrote a letter to the magazine and said, hey, I'm trying to get in touch with Gunner Hansen. Can you forward this letter to him? And sure enough, mailed it snail mail, and like a week later, gets a message on my answer machine from Gunner Hansen from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He said, yeah, that's me. And we talked and made a deal and flew him down from Maine to South Carolina, filmed all his scenes in one night and sent him back. And that was that.
And did you end up doing that every 4 years?
Yeah, because it was Gunner Hansen. We put him in all three of our movies, and again, each time we filmed him just for one day. And again, we were trying to use some different actors too, but again, everybody, was SAG. We tried to get people again like Angus Scrimm, David Carradine, Jonathan Frid from Dark Shadows, all those people. But of course, they were all in the Screen Actors Guild, so we couldn't do it. So we used Gunner Hansen all three times. And then for the second one, FREAKSHOW, we also got Veronica Carlson, who was in a lot of the famous Hammer movies like Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. I read a magazine article with her, and it said she lived in South Carolina. So I was like, holy shit, we don't have to pay to fly her up. We can driver up. So, and she wasn't in the Screen Actors Guild, so we put her in it. And then for the third movie, we got Gunner Hansen and Debbie Rochon, who was a cult name, and then we also got J.J. North, who at the time was doing some cult movies like Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. Again, she was not in the Screen Actors Guild, so each movie we added a different cult name, but again, it had to be somebody who was not in the Screen Actors Guild. So
now, obviously, a lot of people know you for your knowledge on Charles Bronson, and they might not realize that you've also directed films. Was horror? Did you fall in love with horror around the same time as Charles Bronson? Is that something that's always been a part of you?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the funny thing is, it's like those movies I made. My God, so long ago. It was a lifetime ago, so I really don't even consider myself a filmmaker anymore. I just consider myself a film historian. But yeah, to answer your question, when I was a kid, I loved horror movies too, and that was always my dream at one point. I wanted to be a horror filmmaker and specialize in that. So we take, you don't always get what you want. So the horror filmmaking thing didn't work out for me. So I had to reinvent myself, take different paths.
Well, you have 3 films with cult stars in them. That's better than a lot of guys are doing right now. So it's not bad.
And I think they hold up. Even Campfire Tales that has the, for lack of a better word, the worst technical presentation that I've been able to find and watch it because it's an upload of a VHS tape. It was still very entertaining and very effective. And watching HELLBLOCK 13 on Amazon Prime, so let's promote that. That is on Amazon Prime right now. Was a very fun watch. I mean, I found myself quoting it. Don't you hit me with no more food. I've been saying that to my wife.
Right.
And the hell if she, takes one of my 18-ounce, $8.32 porterhouse and puts it on her eye. I ain't gonna go for that.
Oh yeah, that middle segment was great.
Oh, and before we go to that, there's something else about Campfire Tales. And I guess that was in your the part I'm thinking about was in the one of the other sections you directed, Paul, the Fright Before Xmas or Christmas. The music. What band was that, or who did the music?
For that particular Christmas segment?
Yeah, that was the metal track, right?
Yeah, the metal track was in I think The Hook.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. It was The Hook. I was merging the two parts because they were inside a house. But yeah, right. It was The Hook. Yeah. Yeah,
the metal music was done by and again, this was done while we were The Hook was done while we were in school. So the guy who the electronic music was done by a guy named Kevin Green, who he actually passed away like last year. He did like the experimental music. Mm-hmm. And then the metal music was done by a guy named Steve Borders, who is now like a very successful technician for live theater. He does sound and lights, audio design for live theater. He did the metal music in that. And then a guy named the guitar player was a guy named Jack Easterling, and I don't know what happened to Jack Easterling, but that was a fun time. We were very young in college, and a friend of ours who was into a musician liked horror movies too. We were like, "Do you want to score a horror movie?" He's like, "Oh yeah, great." So he came up with that, and that really added the. And then his friend was a guitarist who added that stuff in there too. So that's how that came together. Again, just a bunch of young, energetic kids trying to do stuff.
Oh, it definitely had a lot of energy, and it, some of, I guess, which has become a trope of it is that, the hard rock or metal during an intense, scene in a horror movie, you got that. But the electronic stuff, the kind of the ambient stuff and the electronic and the what builds like the tone in the background. Like that stuff was great too, especially in HELLBLOCK 13 as well. I really liked the music and I assume it was a keyboard, but it was a piano effect going on in the Watery Grave segment.
Right. Yeah, those we had. Yeah. Yeah, and then the HELLBLOCK 13 was all done with synthesizers. Two different guys did different segments, and they were both really talented. They had their own, setups at home. So.
Well, I definitely like the Watery Grave, and that was very reminiscent of some true crime stuff we had here in South Carolina.
Right.
Which was the Smith killing.
Susan Smith. Yep.
Susan
right.
Smith.
Yeah, that's one that was pretty obviously blatantly based on that one. Yep.
But then it had a very kind of, and I liked the effects too, and the makeup that was going on in those. I guess the daughter in the boat, it reminded me of Friday the 13th a little bit, when she was walking out into the lake and going up to that boat and stuff. But it just had a really good tone. I like how there was, in both movies, there were some kind of fun, humorous parts, but it wasn't played as, this film is a joke. It still had a serious tone, which made everything work for me, because that's what I want. I look for that in horror. I mean, I like to have fun with movies too, but I like something that's overall more serious, and then that's when I think if there is humor, it plays off and, breaks the tension and gives dynamics to a film. But, kudos on those. Like I remember liking what I'd seen from you back in the day, but it did hold up, and I had a lot of fun. It's not just because I like you as a person and I like working with you on the stuff we've done together, but it really is fun. I'm going to try to get other people to watch this as soon as possible, and especially to the audience out there listening, they need to go to Amazon Prime. And is the format that I found Campfire Tales on, is that okay to promote, or would you rather not people?
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. It's like it's on. Somebody's put it on YouTube, which it's fine. You can, anything you're looking for, you can look on YouTube. Sometimes you find it, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's there, then it's gone. So the quality varies, but yeah, I don't mind sending people there.
We were talking before we went live about the elements of that film. Is and the 16 millimeter stuff being lost. Is there? Do you have any better elements than a VHS copy?
I have I have like some video masters of it.
Okay.
But I don't know if something like that, to get it on like a Blu-ray or something, you really would need to go to the negative, which would be it's very complex to do. 16 millimeter negative is not like a 35 millimeter negative. It's really it's kind of like made like a checkerboard. Each cut, I don't know how to describe it. It's a complex negative. It's not straightforward images like 35 millimeter. For example, there was whenever they put a 60 millimeter film into a video master, it's very complex. For example, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Evil Dead, but of course those are big popular movies. It makes sense to spend the money to restore those, but it would be very complex, very expensive to restore Campfire Tales, and I don't think it would be worth it. Was it
Super 16 or just regular 16?
No, regular 16.
Okay. I was just wondering if any of that had to do with like the single, sprockets or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, because I've not edited 16, so that I have to take your word for the complexity, and I know it is. But we would definitely want to see it look as good as it can. But if people seek it out, look it up on YouTube, Campfire Tales. Maybe I YouTube searched Campfire Tales full movie, and it was on there. And It was very fun. So check it out.
And you gotta make sure you put it. It's the 1991 or
19, yes.
Gunner Hansen, because there was another Campfire Tales made in 1997. And the interesting thing about that is because it was similar and because their first story is also an adaptation of The Hook, they actually they had to pay us the rights to use the title Campfire Tales.
Oh, really?
So that was one of the very few times in my life that I was at the right place at the right time. With those people, it was their distributor. In order to get an insurance policy, they had to verify that nobody was going to sue them, and they found out about this other movie, so they had to pay us. I probably should have asked for more, but at the time I was desperately in need of money, so I was happy to get what we got. But it was a decent sum. So.
And before we just go ahead and leave this stuff and get more into your more modern things and your authorship and film history, what about Mysterious Island and that series? How did that come about?
Oh yeah, that's not me. There's another guy named that.
It got attributed to you. And in fact, IMDb.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, that's attributed to me, but I have that's not me. That's like a television movie I had nothing to do with. In fact, Internet Movie Database, it used to tie me in with several Paul Talbots. There was a Paul Talbot who was like a location manager or a driver or something. They used to tie me into him too, but that's not. They finally separated that. But I'm not the Paul Talbot who produced the Mysterious Island TV series.
You're still getting the designation of the first Paul Talbot, because they do a Roman numeral that is half size font and parentheses to denote what time you appeared in the IMDb database. And if another Paul Talbot comes up, he would have to be the half font Roman numeral 2.
Right.
I'm the Roman half font Roman numeral 2 Stephen Nemeth, although a couple people have put on credits for me and not realizing I was already Stephen Nemeth, the second Stephen Nemeth on IMDb. So it created a third and a fourth, which was kind of confusing because I am Stephen Nemeth the third. That is my suffix, in my family name. But I don't use that because the rest of them are dead. So I'm not trying to differentiate myself from my grandfather and my father anymore. So I just, do the Steve Nemeth thing. But the Steve Nemeth, the first, or the half font Roman numeral 1 in IMDb, is actually the producer of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And he's a documentary filmmaker who is his dad and my dad are cousins, I believe. So, I think I told you before that Stephen Nemeth is kind of like John Smith for Hungarians and ethnic maggots. It sounds original, but there's a heck of a lot of us out there, even if you search on Facebook.
Right. Yeah, that's why you have to whenever you join a union, you can't two people in a union can't have the same name. For example, if you wanted to be if you joined the Directors Guild of America, if there was already a Stephen Nemeth, you couldn't use that name. You would have to call yourself Stephen Nemeth III or use your middle initial or something like that.
And I've thought about that because I used to do Stephen A. Nemeth III or Stephen Alexander Nemeth. Right. That used to be the way I went professionally on every document and everything. And it just seemed a little pretentious. And then my dad was Steve, and my friends called my dad Steve. And then after he passed away, they started calling me Steve. So I was just like, well, I don't even need all this other stuff. I don't need to use my middle name and my suffix anymore. And at least I don't think he's really directed anything, though. So he's known as a producer of documentaries, and then he produced the Terry Gilliam film with Johnny Depp. So I might, if it is the DGA I get to join, I might be able to keep myself as Stephen Nemeth. I don't know. We'll have to see how that works out. But some new whippersnapper might come up named Stephen Nemeth directing stuff faster than I get recognized.
That's right. Yep.
We don't even know. So we had this big. We have a gap in time here from the with about 6 years, and were you preparing for the first Bronson book that whole time, or
Yeah, well, like,
how did you
after I
focus on
did,
that?
after I did HELLBLOCK 13, I tried to get some other movies made. I wrote a whole bunch of scripts and did a couple, presentations and stuff like that. So I was still focusing on trying to do filmmaking. And then I kind of segued into, I had always done like some making of articles. I had been doing that since, ever since I got out of college. So I was always doing that on the side. I was doing a lot of the articles about the making of certain movies and stuff like that. And then I actually spent, I was doing the Mondo Mandingo book and the Death Wish book at the same time. So I put several years of research into both of them. Again, to write a book on a nonfiction book, you got to spend a lot of time searching for the information. You go to eBay, search for press books and scripts and stuff like that, and trying to find out biographies on certain people and things like that. So, and tracking people down to interview. So I did all my books. I put several years of work into all of them.
Well, Charles Bronson got on your radar through, your love for film with your mom, and then, watching The Great Escape with your dad. How did the Mandingo phenomenon hit your radar, and where did it become something that you decided to dedicate so much energy to?
Yeah, that's it's kind of like I always say, I only write about something when I have to. What that means is usually I can a certain actor or something, I'll or a certain genre, I'll say, hey, what's up with that? I can find books about them, so I don't have to do any research. But like with the Death Wish series and the Mandingo series, I'm like, what the hell is this? I couldn't find the information. I had to go out there and seek it. Mandingo came about, again, I grew up in the 1970s, and there was always these books I would see. I would go to the drugstore, look at the rack of paperbacks, stuff that I was never going to be able to read. I just liked to look at the pictures and read the synopsis. There was a tremendous amount of what they were called the slaver books, meaning books that took place during the plantation era. Lurid, violent, sexy books about that. So I would see all those covers. And then I saw the ad in the newspaper for Mandingo, the movie. And of course, I was way too young to see it. And then it was around it was sometime in the 1980s. I don't remember exactly when. It might have been like 80, 81. HBO showed the Mandingo movie. And I watched that and it blew me away. I was like, what the hell is this? And the next day at school, all the kids were talking about it. So I always was intrigued by that one. And then when I got to, I started researching that one. When the hell was that? Probably like in the mid 2000s. I just got really fascinated by it. I was like, how the hell did this book series get made? How did the movie get made? So I started just doing really intensive research on that, which ultimately led to a book about the Mandingo phenomenon.
And with Bronson's Loose and your first book, it was mainly about the Death Wish films,
right?
So did you just feel like there was so much more about Bronson that was it things that you didn't get to talk about or just didn't fit in with the way you focused your structure and topic in the book? Is that what led to a second one, or at what point did you say I need to do more, or there's some more I need to research to do? How did that even come about?
Yeah, the interesting thing was, for the first Bronson's Loose, the Making of the Death Wish films, that first book started when I watched the original Death Wish for the first time in like 10 years. I happened to get it. This is before it was even on DVD. I rented it, the VHS copy, watched it, and I was like, wow, that's a really intense movie. Because again, I hadn't seen it in 10 years. I was looking at it from older eyes. I was looking more deep into it. Mm-hmm. And so then I went ahead and watched Death Wish 2, 3, 4, and 5. I hadn't seen them in many years. Many of them I hadn't seen since they first came out. So I watched all of them in a marathon session during a weekend. And I was like, what the hell is this? How do we get from the first movie to the fifth movie? They're all totally different. And so that led to the first thing I did was interview Michael Winner. I said, Michael Winner directed the first 3 movies. I said, if I don't get an interview with Michael Winner, there's no point in doing any further research. So I found him, got an interview with him, and which went great. And it just built and built into a book, which I self-published it. I couldn't find a publisher for it. So I self-published it, and it got a really good following. I got a lot of response from it. And then I had no intention at the time of doing another Bronson book. I had no intention of doing any books at all. And then Facebook started up, and a guy wrote me, a guy named Horace Cordier, and he was a friend of mine on Facebook, and he said, I liked your Bronson's Loose book. He said, my cousin wrote the Bronson movie, The Evil That Men Do. I can put you in touch with him if you want to talk about that one. So I was like, okay, great. So I did an article on The Evil That Men Do and interviewed the screenwriter, John Crowther, who wrote the script for that. And I couldn't find a magazine who wanted to publish it. So I was like, okay, here we are again. I said, I'm going to go ahead and do a book about all of the movies made after Death Wish. And I'm going to try to interview as many people as I can. I'm only going to do chapters on books that I can find at least one person to interview. And I said, I'm not going to spend years on it. I'm going to give myself 2 years. Whatever I can do in 2 years, I'm going to do it. So that's what led to
How long did the first one take?
The first one took, like I said, I was writing the first Bronson's Loose and Mondo Mandingo like at the same time. So overall, that one took me probably maybe 4 years. And like I said, it's not 4 years of nonstop working 12 hours a day. Again, I was working a full-time job and family and everything like that. So I'm not able to work on them all day long. Plus my research wasn't as skilled as it is now. So it took me a long time to find stuff and research stuff and get interviews and things like that.
What was interviewing Golan like?
At the time, he was very ill. It was towards the end of his life. I actually got in touch with him through his assistant at the time. So our interview was done by email. I sent him the questions, and he responded back through email. So I didn't actually speak with him on the phone. It was done through through email.
I always thought he and Globus were just really interesting characters, and the canon phenomenon was just something so special,
Right. Yeah, that's why, like, my first Bronson's Loose book, of course, Bronson's Loose 2, 3, and 4, the Death Wish 2, 3, and 4 were canon movies. Death Wish 5 was made by Manam Golan by himself. And then, so the book pretty much became kind of like a tribute to canon anyway. And then, of course, Bronson's Loose again covered all the other canon movies. So both those books became kind of like canon history books almost. Also became canon history books in addition to Death Wish history books and Bronson history books.
What's your favorite Death Wish?
Oh, without question, the original. The original is really, the original, people think of it, the sequels have pretty much ruined the first one because for some reason, because now people think of the Death Wish movies as just as crazy, over the top, violent movies, action movies. Whereas the first Death Wish isn't even an action movie. When you watched it, it's more like a psychological drama. It's
it's a study of the character, the way I always felt it.
Yeah, it's a character study. In my opinion, the original Death Wish is as good as any other movie made in the 1970s. It's certainly probably one of the most underrated movies of the 1970s. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say I love the relationship between him and the developer that he goes to visit when he's designing the neighborhood.
Right. And it's and it's funny, a lot of people, action fans, don't like the first one because they sit down to watch it and they realize this isn't an action movie. So a lot of action fans don't really like the first one. So.
Oh, and I think it's a brilliant film. Me and the wife watched it again recently, and Rape is kind of a hard point for her in watching films. Um,
Sure.
but she's like, I was like, you sure you want to watch Death Wish? And she's like, yeah, my dad used to watch it all the time. So I think they watched it mainly on TV growing up.
Right.
And so she's like, and she enjoyed the film. It didn't, bother her like it normally would, I guess, because there's some kind of nostalgia there. But yeah, that film today still punches you in the gut.
Yep.
It's such a great film.
You said it right. It is a psychological film, and that is my favorite type of filmmaking. I love action, and there's all different types of things that I love about cinema because it really is an adventure. But what I like to read and what I like to watch the most are these subtle stories about psychology and about someone changing.
Right.
And it does it. That's my favorite type of storytelling. Is Death Wish your favorite Bronson film?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I'd have to think about that one because, of course, he made a lot of movies in the '60s where he's part of an ensemble. So I see those differently as the movies in which he plays the lead character in. So it'd be hard to say. It may be. I'd have to sit down. I just made a list a while back, but I can't remember.
And I would
of
him as the star power. I would separate the ensemble films from that.
Right, exactly. I guess I would. Let me think. It's hard to say. I can probably my 5 favorites of the '70s would be. Oh boy. Death Wish, Hard Times, Mr. Majestic, The Mechanic, and then I can't remember what the fifth one is. I made a list, but I would say I'll go.
City make it?
I'm sorry, what?
Violent City, does that one make it?
Violent City. I think that's the one I would put. Yeah.
It's a damn good movie too. Do you like Mr. Majestic better than The Mechanic?
No, I like The Mechanic better than Mr. Majestic. Although I love Mr. Majestic, but The Mechanic is an insane movie. That one's a really deep, rich, underrated movie too.
I watched that one with my wife when I got the Gates of Hell and that on. I ordered them on release day or whenever the link let you order them, right. And my wife really enjoyed it, and she was like so excited at the finale. And this is an old movie. I guess everybody knows it, but since it's just got a new restoration, I won't speak too specifically about the ending. But when Michael Vincent finds the note when he gets in the car at the end, she's like, yes, and I was like, hell yeah, that was a great movie. And I loved that we got to bond over that movie, and she enjoyed it so much. He is a badass, but he's, I find it complex watching him. There's just so many awesome things he's done. I've been trying to collect them all. Is there a good edition of Hard Times out there? Because I have that Mill Creek, 4-movie set, and I was hoping to get a better one.
Yeah, there's a really good one from Eureka in the UK.
Oh, I love Eureka. Okay.
Yeah, they put out a it has the same 4K restoration as the Mill Creek, but of course it's on a disc by itself, and they did an encoding on it, so it looks and sounds much better. But that edition also has an interview with Walter Hill and an interview with the producer, Larry Gordon, I think is his name.
Yeah, the Mill Creek is bare bones.
Right.
That set. It's got a good selection of movies on it, but I do love the extras, the interviews, commentaries, and things like that, because especially with my son growing up, I want him to experience these classics and in a better way than I did. You know, the ones that I couldn't see in the theater that I had to see on TV or VHS. And you know, I considered my film library I collected was my film school. You know, before I started studying other ways independently, you know, with hands-on with people. And I think your commentaries are going to be a part of that. So
good.
Yeah,
and that's also the Mill Creek one. Of course, it has like 2 movies on each disc. So of course, whenever you do that, you're gonna have less detail. You're gonna have what do you call it? More compression issues.
I'm trying to remember what Valachi Papers, Hard Times. What are the other 2 on that set?
Breakout and the Stone Killer.
That's right.
Yep.
Now,
David, I wanted to ask you this: when your wife saw the original Death Wish, was she familiar with any other Charles Bronson films?
You know, maybe just through maybe dad watching them, but no, she's not a film fanatic.
Right.
So that one she remembers. I think she might remember some of the Death Wish sequels, but no, she's definitely not a Charles Bronson fan.
Right. Because that makes a difference. Because of course, a lot of people, when they sit down and watch the original Death Wish, if they're already a Bronson fan and they've seen his other more over the top movies, as soon as he appears, they can be like, "Yeah, kick ass." But then, of course, if you don't know Bronson, if you don't have those preconceived notions, you know, the original Death Wish works better because you're just watching this man's journey. You know, you don't have this preconceived conceptions of him being expecting him to be a Superman.
Yeah, and I saw the film so young, and I think I rediscovered it probably in my later teens, because you see it on TV here and there, and something about that film, you know, it's in the same vein of how I'm attracted to Taxi Driver.
Right.
Just you know how impactful the character of Travis Bickle is. That's how I feel about Death Wish, because I'm a big fan of character studies as well. And you know, the other Death Wish films are fun, you know, and you know, they have some iconic moments, but none of them hit me at a level that the original does.
Right.
I find the other ones fun, and I like them because I like the original Death Wish. I like to see more of the character, and I'm a big Martin Balsam fan. I love Martin Balsam, so seeing him in 3 is really great. Yeah. And I also like Larry Fishburne and oh God, what was the
Alex Winter? Alex Winter?
No, not Alex Richter. The other Alex, who was on the host of MTV's Liquid Television. He played one of the gang members. He was Bill and Ted.
Yeah, Alex Winter.
Alex Winters.
Oh, Winters. Oh, I thought you said Richter for some reason. Yes, Winter. I'm sorry. Yes, Alex Winter.
Right.
Yeah, that makes it fun to see these people in those roles, and of course, I like Jimmy Page's score in Part 2. Although I found out recently you're really into the score of Part 3.
And Part 1, was that Jeff Goldblum's first role?
I'm trying to think. It certainly was one of his first. I'm trying to think. It may have been his very, very first. If it wasn't the very first, the other stuff he did. Actually, no, I'm positive now. Yeah, that was his first film. Yes. The original Death Wish was definitely Jeff Goldblum's first film.
And these are really brutal roles for these guys. I mean, Jeff Goldblum and Alex Winter and
Lawrence Fishburne.
Lawrence Fishburne, yes. Yeah, I mean, they were not holding back. They were the worst of the worst, you know, on the streets. There was nothing redeeming about them.
In fact, they had to, when Michael Winter was auditioning the actors for Death Wish 2, in the audition, they had to actually rape a chair.
Oh, Jesus.
Is that way, just so he would know that they were able to, what's the word, give it all they've got, not be afraid of violent scenes, rough scenes, stuff like that.
Well, during all your research, What do you think's the most interesting piece of information you came across about Charles Bronson?
Oh boy, that's interesting. What's interesting is that there was like kind of like most people, a broad spectrum. It's kind of like everybody, some people might say, oh, he was really sweet and nice. Other people say he was really cold and aloof. Other people say he was really rude. So just like anybody, there's so many different sides to it. The interesting thing is, when he was very young, he grew up in a dirt poor coal mining town. His family were coal miners. He started out as a coal miner. And I think like the supervisors, the bosses who were middle-aged men at the time, really were kind of very cruel to him. And that kind of like for the rest of his life, he kind of had like a resentment of middle-aged men, because the people who have bad things to say about him or didn't really like him were like the middle-aged men, whereas you never hear a woman say anything bad about him. Every single woman I talked to was saying how sweet he was, how nice he was, how pleasant he was, how funny he was. And the young men also, the young actors he worked with, they were all saying how, he was kind of quiet, but he was very supportive. He would like play game, throw knives with them on the set, play games like that. So those, those different viewpoints there, from different people was, I thought that was interesting.
I think that's telling too, because if the people that are usually the ones taken advantage of the most, or people care less about their opinion, especially historically, the way production has been, and a lot of things were seen as a man's world or whatever. If you don't have any stories of disrespect, and you only have, it seems like this is very genuine, because this is where abuse, or if somebody's going to be slighted, this is where it's going to happen,
Right.
And so that's awesome to hear about it. And I mean, he was a badass, so maybe some of these other people felt challenged by him.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
or something.
From your interviews, do you think other actors were intimidated by him at all?
Yeah, some were, because of course he was not a chatty person. He really didn't talk to too many people. He was 100% professional, but usually when the director would call cut, he would go off, usually sit by himself. And it was pretty obvious that his body language was saying, "Look, leave me alone. Don't come over here and try to, don't come over here and try to talk to me." So, whereas other times, so he would approach other people. He loved kids. If there was a kid on the set, he would go over there and start throwing a ball with them, or he would do different things like he was a knife thrower on the set. He used to throw knives, and he also did this thing where he would take a piece of paper, roll it up into a cone, put a nail in it, and then blow into it. The nail would stick into a tree. And whenever there was a kid around, he would teach him that trick. And he would also, the women on the set also, he would do like this, I can't think of the name. It's a card game where you play for like pennies. Like I think it's called Pinochle or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. But anyway, he would do that. It was just for him and the women on the set, the makeup women, the costume women, just where he would, it was just a game just between him and the female crew members.
Now, how did the change come? How did you get into doing the commentary tracks? How did that come about?
Yeah, that was interesting because I really don't like commentary tracks. I rarely listen to them, and I never would have considered myself doing a commentary track. But then a company in Britain called Signal One Entertainment, they got in touch with me. One of their first releases was Mr. Majestic, and they said, "We'd like, do you want to do a commentary track?" And I was like, "Well, I don't do commentary tracks. Can I write a making of article for a booklet?" And they were like, "Well, we don't want to do booklets." I said, "Well, how about if I do it and you put it up on the screen? People click through the text." And he said, "No, we don't want to do that." And I'm like, "Okay, what the hell?" And he offered me with the money. At the time, I needed the money, and I'm like, "What the hell? I'll go ahead and try this." So I did it, put a lot of work into it, and finished it. And I'm like, that's a piece of shit. He's probably not even going to accept it. But he accepted it, liked it, and paid me it, and it got good reviews. And then the next one was Shout Factory contacted me and said, "Do you want to do commentary for Death Wish 2?" And by that point, I had more confidence, so I did that one. And then it's got to the point where people like know my work, and whenever somebody is going to do a Bronson movie, I usually get contacted to do the commentary track. And I also, whenever I hear of a new company, I'll go ahead and send them a query or email just saying who I am, what I do, and say, if you get anything for me, let me know. I'd like to do a commentary track. And I've done some Bronson ones again. Let me see. I just got my list right here. Yeah, so I've done, I guess I've done 12 Bronson commentary tracks, and then I've done 3 non-Bronson commentary tracks. I've done one for the 1953 World War II movie Between Heaven and Hell, and I did for the science fiction movie Damnation Alley, and for the 1970 Stanley Kramer movie RPM. I've done commentaries for those also.
Oh, okay.
I'd forgotten you did the Shout release for Death Wish 2 because
right.
That was the first thing I ever heard you do. But I've kind of been focusing on my Umbrella release, which you did the write up in, and it is women is in the Umbrella. Are you comparing the 2 cuts? Is that what you're?
Umbrella, the Australian.
Else?
Yeah, no, that was Umbrella, the Australian company. They did a double feature of Death Wish 2 and Death Wish 3.
Yes.
And they asked me to do Death Wish 3, but unfortunately I didn't have the time to do it. So I did on the Umbrella release of Death Wish 2 and 3 at the beginning of Death Wish 2, I have a text on there which I explain the differences between the different cuts.
2. Yes, that's right. And that's why I've been spending so much time on the Umbrella one, is because we had the director's cut, the theatrical, and then the Greek TV version. And I was like really having fun looking at all the differences between those. And your introduction really was a good guidance into, knowing, what I was going to expect going into each one. And I'm sorry I didn't mention that in the beginning on your on Death Wish 2, because it had been a while since I listened to that one, and I got both the Umbrella double features because I really needed a good copy of Death Wish 5, and you have a great commentary on that one, and then I think somebody had them as a lot. Somebody was selling both of them, and I got them. And they, and I like both of those releases. I feel like if you love Death Wish and you love Bronson, I think you need the Shout edition and the Umbrella edition, because there's just all these different versions on the Umbrella editions. Plus, we get the commentary with you on the Shout. The Shout has 2 different versions, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, the Shout has the unrated version and the R-rated version.
That's right.
And let me note this too. The Shout Factory Death Wish 2 Blu-ray is going to go out of print this year. So if people interested want to pick that up, that's right. And I'll just read. Here's the ones. I'm sorry. What?
No, I was just going to say it has a really awesome reversible cover that has that really gritty artwork where it says Bronson's Loose on it, which I love.
Right.
But I love the other side of this. This one thing that sucks about some of the reversible covers. I like the ones where they have new artwork that's kind of cool, but then they have the original classic artwork. But when they have 2 really awesome artworks, it's like I can't make up my mind which I want to do, and I end up handling the that insert cover too much. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Paul.
Right. Oh, I'll go ahead and say these are the Bronson movies that I've done commentaries for. Mr. Majestic for Signal 1, Death Wish 2 for Shout Factory, Cabo Blanco for Kino Lorber, The Stone Killer for Twilight Time, double feature of Death Wish 4 and Death Wish 5 for Umbrella, 10 to Midnight for Scream Factory, Breakout for Indicator, The Mechanic for Scorpion Releasing. And just this past week, I recorded Death Wish 3, and I've also recorded the Valdez Horses. And next month, I record the Valachi Papers. So there's 3 more coming up this year.
Awesome. Now, what is your process? What is your setup when you're doing a commentary?
Yep. Usually, I usually tell them that I need 90 days to do it. Now, of course, it doesn't take me all day, every day for 90 days, but split in between the other stuff I do. I extensively research it, find out everything I can. Then I time the film out, meaning I kind of like do just a breakdown of what happens in the film so I know where to put the information. And then I have to, which is the hardest part, dropping all that information into the film timed with what's going on. And then you also have to tell the story behind the film. Get all that together within 90 minutes or an hour and 45 minutes, whichever it is.
So are you watching the film on silent as you're recording?
Yes, I go into a studio here in town, and then I have the film. The label sends me a link of the film, so of course I sort of time up perfectly. And also, I always have them send me their version because, of course, there's always some time. There might be a little bit of idiosyncrasy. The logo at the beginning might be different and stuff like that. And there's always some little cuts appear here and there that surprise you sometimes too. So yeah, I have the film running on one screen, and then I have my laptop with my script in front of it, and then read it. And then of course, it's perfectly in sync. So if I flub a line, we can stop, pick it up right then and there. So
do you record at the Jam Room?
Yeah, the Jam Room studio in Columbia, South Carolina. That's where I record my commentary tracks.
What's been the most difficult one to do?
It's hard to say. Let's see. Well, the one I'm working on now is the Valachi Papers. That one's difficult mainly because that one's like 2 hours and 6 minutes. So that's the longest one I've ever done. So mainly because of the length is one of the reasons why that one's difficult. And
has there been any that's just been hard to really research and find good information to put into a commentary?
Well, usually what I do before I accept the job, I'll make sure I have enough information to put in it, or at least enough an idea of what to put in it. For example, one thing I love to do, like Stephen mentioned earlier, I like to get drafts of the screenplays because I like to point out what scenes were cut, what scenes were in the script but were never filmed and stuff like that. So if I can find a screenplay, that always helps me a lot. But a lot of times I'll turn them down because either I don't have enough time to do it or because I just don't think I have enough material to cover it. Because when you think about these things, even the shortest movie is going to be 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's a long, long time to talk. If you have a college course that's 90 minutes long, the guy doesn't talk the whole time. He comes in late and he takes a break and stuff like that. So to talk for 90 minutes, that's an incredible undertaking.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Do you listen to your commentaries when they come out?
I never listen to them. Nope, I don't even listen to them while I record them. That's why I go into a studio so the engineer is listening to it, and he'll point out if something was unclear or something like that. But once it's finished, I've never listened to any of them. So,
and the reason why I'm asking, we were talking with Troy Howarth last weekend, and I was bringing up how it seems that there have been some commentaries that have been ported over for various releases over the years, like from DVD to Blu-ray, and then from Blu-ray to boutique label Blu-ray. That and I'll use John Carpenter and Kurt Russell's commentary of The Thing as an example, that has been edited by the studio or the distributor, and then retimed, and over a few times there's been a lot of missing information and things are off and now reorganized and retimed to become very wooden and a little more awkward listening experience, where your stuff has a lot of energy. It's just jam packed with information. It's screen specific. Even when you go off, of talking about the production, it's about the location, that set, the people on screen at the time. So it's so engaging, to the movie itself, and it's such a fun listen. I was just wondering if, and I guess the answer is no, but that if that's happened to you, or have you noticed that happen to any films that you like, or you said you didn't really like commentaries originally, before you got into the game. Any thoughts on that stuff?
Yeah, because it's kind of like I said, the main thing about, one thing, like I said, commentary tracks, the reason some of them aren't good is because there just isn't enough information to cover 90 minutes or whatever. Even when they have like the filmmaker, the director, at first you think, wow, this is great. We got the director talking. A lot of times he just doesn't remember anything, or everything he has to say, he's done saying in the first 10 minutes or so,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a
there are a lot of commentaries that I find to be a drag and are not very fun, and that's disappointing when I do find ones that are just not that engaging experience.
Right.
But
and one thing also that you have to be careful of when you're a commentary track for certain distributors, they'll have like a legal team has to listen to the commentary track, and they'll cut out anything that is controversial. One of the first commentary tracks I did, they did cut some stuff out because I pride myself on not having any dead space, but this one had some dead space, and the reason is they cut out some of the controversial stuff. A lot of times you can't even say what the budget was or how much the movie made, because they're afraid that might not be accurate, and they're afraid that like somebody who has a percentage of the profits might say, hey, where's my money, or something like that. And you really you can't say anything negative, and you can't say if somebody died of like a drug use or something like a drug overdose or had a drinking problem, you really can't say stuff like that. So there's like certain labels that I have to be careful of. Like I said, the one label I worked for, it's not the label, it's the distributor, the people that they're licensing the movie from. So it's like one of my first ones, they cut a lot out, and then I learned that I need to just be more, when I'm working for that studio, I have to be careful of what I say. I just need to make sure not to put any negative stuff in there.
Yeah, and I just had a general question about the business, and I'll try to keep it general, and if it's too into it, you can tell me. But how does it usually work? Do they just give you a budget and you handle everything, going to recording studio, or is that handled on the film company side?
It depends. It's usually a flat fee. They'll offer you a flat fee, and for that fee, you have to provide everything for them. Other times, they'll if you go into a studio, they'll pay your fee, and they'll pay the recording studio fee. So each one's different. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen with physical media. It's kind of crazy right now. Well, for one thing, there's like one disc I'm working with. They got some interviews with cast before the pandemic started, and then they wanted to do some more. But then, of course, once the pandemic started, everybody's understandably leery of having a camera person come to their house. So, this pandemic is changing things. Not only it's changing things because at least at this point now, there's certain things we can't do. Like we can't do any interviews, on-camera interviews, and of course, who knows what's going to happen, financially. One thing is one good thing for physical media is nowadays all we can do is stay home and watch movies. We can't go to the theaters, we can't go to concerts. So physical media has actually been doing well during the pandemic. But then on the other hand, if more and more people keep losing their job, they're not going to have any money to buy any physical media. So
Sure.
Yeah,
see what happens.
I used to be really worried about the state of physical media because of downloading culture and torrent culture and things like that that I thought were hurting the distribution side of stuff so much. And then, some of these boutique labels really stepped it up and created really awesome packaging, a plethora of extras, expanded, content with multiple discs and soundtracks and things to, give the collectors a reason to come back to media. I stopped buying a lot of new music for a while, or getting excited about new music, because there were so many artists that were only releasing downloads through Bandcamp or other ways. And I love holding an LP or, even a 5-inch CD, with artwork and things like that. But I definitely, grew up, going and getting LPs and singles from the store. And some of those great LPs, gate folded open, had lyric sheets, wonderful, 12 by 12, covers that folded up into, 2 or 3 feet wide. And it was just so awesome. And I think some of the labels are bringing the excitement back to packaging. But this situation with the pandemic really does change the ability for people to even buy these things, or the companies to continue to produce them.
Well, I think it's even a benefit that there's so much competition in the streaming world now, and you have to have multiple. When Netflix was dominating, they just had so much stuff that you didn't really need to go many other places if you weren't a physical media lover. But so many of them out there now, I think it's actually helping physical media.
Right.
I'm wondering when we will see alternate audio tracks like commentary and things like that on streaming sites like Netflix or some of their other competitors.
Well, they do. I know the Criterion channel does do that. All of the extras is on the streaming as well.
See, I've never been to the Criterion channel as a Criterion channel. I got Hulu back in the day, or Hulu Plus, because there was the Criterion library for streaming on that. And mainly I just kind of looked at a few movies because I already trusted the Criterion Collection and I wanted to get them physically. So sometimes if there was a movie that I wasn't as familiar with, I would just kind of sample and I'd be like, oh yeah, I definitely want to own this. And then I would just get it. So do you remember if that was even an option before Criterion was its own channel?
You mean was extras on streaming?
Yeah, or if Criterion was doing that when they were partnering with Hulu back in the day, or is that just something that has started since they're the channel?
I think it's only been since the Criterion channel. That's the way I understand it. I can't be sure, but that's what I think.
Speaking of a commentary on Criterion that has annoyed me recently, and I got to go back because I think this was ported over from the Shout Factory release, but the commentary on Way of the Dragon, the audio is probably the poorest I've ever heard on a commentary. It's very muffled and it seems like digitally compressed. So there's like this kind of like, I don't know if you've ever heard like a bad MP3 copy of a song that sounds very kind of digitally distorted or kind of like over echoey with a digital popping and stuff in it, but then kind of muffled at the same time. The commentary on Way of the Dragon is about like that, and it's I couldn't even get into it to see the content because I couldn't even hear the commentator, and it was very disappointing on that. Luckily, the disc itself is such a classic and great movie. I don't think it's going to hurt its sales any, but I wish it had the sound quality of yours, and yours sound great. And if you're in there and working with Jay Matheson and Jam Room, of course it's gonna. I mean, that's obvious why it sounds so great because they know what they're doing there.
And what is You said Way of the Dragon?
Yeah. Return of the Dragon.
The Bruce Lee movie?
Bruce Lee, yeah.
Okay.
They issue it as Way of the Dragon because that was the original title. But yeah, I grew up calling it Return of the Dragon, so that's probably what you know it as.
And who did the commentary?
I'm trying to remember. I can find. David, is your discs within your reach, or I could ask?
No, it's not. I know they have a few different Bruce Lee film historians.
Okay. So maybe the guy recorded at home and just had a poor setup, or what?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, but it's a huge box set, so it's 5 movies with multiple cuts. So I guess
Right.
I'm actually my wife is handing me the it's in that center stack, Lee, I believe.
All right.
You mean your Bruce Lee box set isn't just right next to you, Stephen?
Well, it's hard to find. It's not labeled on the box set. An easy way to see it. It's
yeah, I don't.
The Shout Factory has it. It should be in that middle stack in front of you, Lee. I got the cover reversed with the Chinese art, so it might be harder. And if you can grab the Criterion box set too, I would appreciate it if you can hand me that as well. It might be on the shelf by the player, because I was going to watch Enter the Dragon with Holt.
Did you guys? Is that set good overall though? The quality of the actual movies?
They're 4K scans, and I believe they're the same scans that Shout Factory had from 2 or 3 years ago, and they do look really good. I mean,
a couple of them are new.
Okay.
A couple of them are new 4K scans. The Way of the Dragon /
that information. I wanted to be able to confirm that, David. Not that I doubt you. I just want to be able to show other people that.
The Way of the Dragon / Return of the Dragon. I think the negatives aren't that great. Me and Steven talked about it. I think there was some guerrilla shooting going on in that movie as well.
They're out and about in Rome. There's some shakiness and some bad focus going on.
Bad focus, so I don't know. I don't think I can blame that on the Criterion. But I watched. Which one did I watch?
Big Boss.
No, I haven't watched Big Boss yet. I watched Way of the Dragon. Oh, Fist of Fury looks great. And such a great film. But I'll probably be done watching all those within the next few days because I was so excited to get that box set.
Right.
I'm trying to see. I'm looking at the Criterion because that's the one that I actually heard the weird compression on, but I thought it was the same. English lady, Michael. There's just so many extras on here. It's just kind of jammed into a big block of text with like dots in between each information instead of like bullet points. So it's hard to see.
Right.
It's not divided for each release. On the it's Mike Leader.
Oh, it's a new 2K digital restoration of Enter the Dragon, and a new 2K restoration of the special edition version of Enter the Dragon. Let's see, Game of Death. It's by Mike Leader is the one who he did Way of the Dragon and Game of Death.
Yeah, that's the same guy that is on the Shout Select version, and I'm assuming it's the same commentary.
Right.
It's probably just a bad track.
Right. Where are you seeing that? Are you looking on the back of the box set for Criterion, David?
I'm on the website.
Okay, yeah. I copied and pasted it into a post when this thing is coming out. So just about this box set itself, I think it's definitely worth it. There are audio tracks, and there is a cut of Game of Death that are only on the Shout versions that did not make it to the Criterion Bruce Lee Greatest Hits box set. So for Game of Death and all the other movies, they've got multiple Chinese soundtracks. So they have them in mono. Sometimes there's an alternate Chinese soundtrack. Then there's the Mandarin soundtrack, and then sometimes they have a surround version of it as well. So sometimes there's like 4 Chinese tracks that are different. Then there's an English dub, and then there's sometimes an alternate English dub. So some of these have maybe 7 audio tracks, which the Bruce Lee Criterion set doesn't. It just seems like they have a Cantonese, a Mandarin, and an English. Actually, on Way of the Dragon, they had the American English, and they had the Japanese release English dub, which was also on the Shout version. But the Shout version really had about 4 other audio tracks that weren't there. Then, Game of Death has the American version, which is a 100-minute cut, and then the Chinese version is a 90-minute cut. It doesn't seem that the Chinese version is on the Criterion set. So I bought the Criterion set because it was going to have the 2K scans of Enter the Dragon, theatrical cut, and special edition. I have the Warner Brothers HD special edition, but I don't have the theatrical cut on anything, but I guess a VHS tape that came out long before the special edition in the 90s. And then it has Game of Death 2 as an HD scan, which I only have on the Fortune Star DVD box set. And then it's also got, no, I guess that was it. The 2 cuts of Enter the Dragon.
It has a Game of Death Redux.
Redux. So I have the Fortune Star box set that has all of Bruce Lee's original footage that has him with his friends that were ascending the pagoda. Because in Game of Death, it's only Bruce Lee ascending the pagoda. But in the original version that he wrote, he was going up and challenging each of the masters with 4 friends. And 2 of the guys got killed on the first 2 floors. And then he went through the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th floor with the remaining 2 friends. So they have a Game of Death Redux, which is 34 minutes, that they redubbed so you get all the dialogue. And I think the audio was missing from a lot of the dialogue on the Fortune Star box set. So that Game of Death Redux, the Game of Death 2 in HD, and the both versions of 2K scans of Enter the Dragon, that makes it worth it just there. Because if you were buying even 2 releases of it from somebody else, I mean, that could be, 20-something bucks a pop. And if you get it at the half-off sale at Barnes & Noble, if you have a membership, it's like 56 bucks to get the 7 Blu-ray box set. So my answer is
theatrical cut of Game of Death. Does it have a theatrical cut of Game of Death?
It's got the American 100-minute cut on the box set.
Okay.
Which I believe is the way I saw it growing up. And yeah, that's the way I saw it growing up, because the Chinese copy of Game of Death is Tower of Death is the title screen on that. Yeah, so that would be the theatrical cut. Is the one that came out in 78 when Robert Klaus finally assembled that. Yeah, that would be the American 100-minute cut. So that is on there. And I haven't watched it on the Criterion set, but I've watched the 4K scan on Shout, and I love it. It's incredible.
Sure.
And it makes me excited about that film in new ways, because there's some things about it, that seem exploitative because Bruce is dead and stuff, but it still is a very entertaining film, and I love it for what it is, and it's never looked so good.
Okay.
So I feel the same way about the Bronson stuff, like with Death Wish 2. I've got to have the umbrella double feature of 2 and 3, and I have to have the Shout version of that. That gives me everything I need on Death Wish 2. And I just don't want to see the film. I feel like I need to have each cut of it. That gives me appreciation for the cuts that I like the most. I can sense the rhythm and the changing, and some of the subtle psychology differences that play off, or some of the intentions of the cuts. I love that stuff. It teaches. That's how I learned editing, was studying different cuts of movies and how sometimes subtle changes can have a huge impact. So I love having alternate cuts. I'll never complain about that, or getting another release to be more complete in a film's history.
Right. Okay.
But so the set is good and it's worth it. I just wouldn't order directly from Criterion again. They actually sent out emails saying, like, we'll refund you your money because Barnes & Noble is going to have this thing cheaper, and we don't care where you get it from as long as you support us. And I just left my order there, and because I did want to support Criterion. I never ordered directly from them before. I've always gotten it from another retailer when it came out, and it seems to be lost for the third time. And usually, like when I order from Shout, I get stuff like sometimes 2 weeks before Street Date, for other retailers. But on the Criterion, it's been out. Everybody's been watching this thing for a long time. If I hadn't gone to Barnes & Noble and bought another copy, I would be out, and who knows if my copy will ever get here. And with it being such a crossover title for Criterion, I didn't want it disappearing or going out of print, or me having to wait months to get it. So I just picked up another one. Right. So yeah, I spent money on it. I spent twice the money on it.
All right.
But are there any other like ultimate badasses that are up there in your focus that you might cover in the future, other than Bronson, or maybe another film topic or franchise?
I'm not sure yet. I mean, like, I'm working on this commentary track now, and then once I get this one done, I need to take some time off to see what's going on. What I want to do next. So. But there's a lot of most of of course what I do historical stuff. I don't do like analysis and stuff like that. So my work depends on getting interviews. Mm-hmm. So there's like a couple of projects that I wanted to do, but I wasn't able to get the interviews for it. So we'll have to see what happens. So
why would you not delve into analysis? And that's not a criticism. That's just a question.
That's just not what I do. It's just not what I'm skilled at, not what I'm good at. So, I mean, I do a little bit of analysis, but not too much. Not going to do like a whole book or a whole commentary track on just analysis. So,
is there anything? Do you have a preferred way for people to buy your books? Is there a platform or retailer or something that works best for you, or do you like support?
Not really. I mean, I'm just glad when people buy the books. They can all be bought at Amazon.com, of course. So that's always the best. That's always the best for the consumer. They get it right away. They're going to get it the cheapest price. So I have no problem with anybody getting it from Amazon.com. That's why I buy most of my stuff from. So.
Is there any? Do you have any websites or social media you would want to plug?
Yeah, I have a Facebook page called Bronson's Loose Again, and what I started that page originally just to promote the Bronson's Loose Again book, but now I use it to promote all the commentary tracks that I have coming out. And I also, whenever I have some free time, I also throw some trivia up there. If I find like a new rare photo of Bronson, I'll throw it up there. Or whenever there's somebody's an actor's birthday or something like that. So you can find me on Bronson's Loose Again. I try to put some good, interesting Bronson stuff on there, and we do some interaction with different fans and stuff like that. So come visit me on Bronson's Loose Again and like that page.
And I always love your archival pictures you put up of stills from films or of actors and actresses. That's always fun to see.
Oh, good. Thanks. Yeah, I try to keep it interesting.
Well, there's so much drama and other stuff on Facebook nowadays. It's great just to see celebration of art.
Right. Good. Yeah.
And David, you want to give them all our plugs here?
Yeah, folks, you can reach us on and come join our Facebook group. It's Sadistic Cinema Community. We also have a Facebook fan page, Sadistic Cinema. Come over and give us a like. Any filmmakers out there, you can email us at sadisticcinema@gmail.com if you're interested in booking with us, or anybody has a question, just send it over. And follow us on Twitter, sadistic_cinema. And thank you, Paul, so much for coming in and discuss your career. Bronson, it's been great and very informative. I always like to learn more about film, and you've been a treasure trove of knowledge, my friend.
Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, man.
Anything else you want to add before we go, Stephen?
No, I think we hit it all. Just want to thank Paul again for being an awesome guest today, and everybody, keep tuning in to our social media for new episodes that are dropping.
Yes, and we will have more coming. Thank you, folks, for listening to Sadistic Cinema, and we will catch you next time.